Welcome back to STEM Talk with STEM Encounters. My name is Saif Manjwani, the CEO and founder of STEM Encounters and the host of STEM Talk with STEM Encounters.
And my name is Shaz. I'm the CEO of STEMencounters and co-host of STEM Talk with STEMencounters.
And you already know what we do. We run a student-led 501c3 nonprofit known as STEM Encounters to teach, encourage, and expanding STEM knowledge for everyone, specifically focused on MSc. This podcast is focused on MSc, as everyone should know.
Yeah, and if you want to find us outside of this podcast, our website, STEMencounters.com. Our Instagram is at STEMencounters. So we're everywhere. We're constantly posting on our Instagram. We have many blog posts. Just trying to keep up with all the news. There's so much stuff going around STEM. So yeah, it's a lot, and we're just trying to keep up with all the news that's going around. And also, after a while, we are finally starting to accept donations with this, which is awesome. So you can go on our website, and if you can, if possible, we'd love to see you guys donate. Everything is going to go back into STEM Encounters. We're a nonprofit, so everything we're going to do is just going to go back into helping you guys expand your knowledge and just learn more about STEM and especially MSc.
Yeah. Definitely check out our donations. Remember, STEM Encounters everywhere. And just check out our Instagram, everything. So without further ado, let's get right into STEM. So the first thing we're going to be talking about today is something that's very interesting and caught both Shaz and I's eye. So it's about researchers using 3D printing to make lifelike heart valve models. So this is all about that innovation we keep on seeing. But this is specifically about 3D printing. We haven't much we talk about 3D printing on the podcast much. We mostly talk about specifically in materials. But remember, 3D printing is a technique that's important to material science and engineering. So a little rundown on what this article is talking about is that researchers from the University of Minnesota have developed a groundbreaking process for multi-material 3D printing of lifelike models of the heart's aortic valve and the surrounding structures that mimic the exact look and feel of the patient. So the squishy parts and everything, they really try to recreate, and in order for them to manipulate and use that for patients to kind of harness and for their betterment. It's kind of crazy how they're actually printing hearts,
Yeah.
which is like 3D printing. But I think it's really cool how healthcare innovation is going so far, especially with 3D printing. Now they're using the surrounding structure. It's not just the aortic valve, Shaz. It's actually everything around. It's an actual heart, and it's not obviously an actual heart, but it's really close.
Yeah.
So these are patient-specific organ models. I think that's really important to mention too, because it's in each patient. So you can have your own model, I can have my own model, and they have 3D printed soft sensor arrays, which just things that take in information. And these models can be used for minimally invasive procedures to prove the outcomes of thousands of patients worldwide. Ultimately, the researchers want to use these 3D printed models to reduce medical risks and complications by providing patient-specific tools to help understand the anatomical structure and mechanical properties specific to a patient's heart. So they want to be really precise, and they don't want to kind of mess anything up. And a really cool thing that I found was when they're doing surgeries or before a procedure, they can actually, instead of going directly into the patient, they can use this to actually prepare. They can, I need to unclog one of the valves in the heart. They can do that instead of just going directly into the patient. And it could also be used as a learning tool for other new people in medicine, new surgeons, whatever.
Yeah, I like right as you said that, right as you were talking about that, I was just thinking about right away, like this could be used in colleges and stuff. It could just speed up the learning process. Having something like so similar to an actual heart seems like something that could be so important for learners to just understand the actual mechanics of and like just understand what they have to do in order to like help patients. And this could really help the world in general, just like help keep people alive that probably would have died without this research. So I honestly think that this is really cool.
Yeah, and one thing I really want to talk to you about, Chaz, is that this organ model was specifically designed to help doctors prepare for a procedure. So it's like the thing that we were just talking about for the preparation, because preparation is ultimately so important in any procedure, in any surgical activity, whatever it may be. And they used it for a specific procedure called the transcatheter aortic valve replacement, or TAVR, in which a new valve is placed inside a patient's native aortic valve. And so the procedure is used to treat a condition which is called aortic stenosis, which occurs when the heart's aortic valve narrows and prevents the valve from opening fully. And this blocks or reduces the blood flow from the heart into the main artery, which ultimately hurts you overall. So this TAVR procedure is so much more less invasive than the open heart surgery. So by using this 3D printing, we're able to do the TAVR procedure, and it's so much less risky and it's so much more safe. And it's not necessarily has a direct effect with the patient, but it has an indirect effect because it makes the doctors better and ultimately it helps the patient live. So I cannot stress this enough. It's so important. And this 3D printing aspect is something that I want to dive into.
Yeah.
So there's one specific thing that when reading this I caught, and I don't know if Shaz, if you know about this, what this is this technique. It's called lithography. So lithography is kind of like etching or printing new patterns or like prints as like this is right here. And it's not exactly what they're doing. I feel like it's more 3D printing, but they said that a lot of the researchers in this article said that they want to use these 3D printing for circuit boards, for semiconductors, and to use these techniques for the future, for other valve devices in the future. And specifically in lithography, there's something called nanolithography, which is kind of more aligned with what the researchers are going to want to do with this technology. It's nanolithography deals with nanotechnology and the engineering of nanoscale structures. So it's printing or etching in the range of 10 to the -9 or 10 to the -6 meters. And it comes from lithography, which is like exact printing, so circuit boards and semiconductors. And you might be thinking like, what's so important about lithography or specifically nanolithography? It's just printing. But without nanolithography, I don't think you guys understand that we wouldn't be able to have any of our phones, laptops, because the nanolithography is used to create transistors onto integrated circuits, like circuit boards and everything. And in order for your phone to work, you kind of need that. And nanolithography makes that possible. And these researchers wanted to kind of implement these electric boards and this printing for the future. While this it's really important, like nanolithography is really important, we need to see like what can be used for the future. What are you thinking, Chaz? Like, what about the future?
I'm just thinking just seeing all these different examples. Like 3D printing has so many different applications, and it's just like so much stuff that needs to be dived into more deeply. Just as like nanolithography, as you were talking about with the heart valves. So I just think that a lot more research has to go into it just to make sure that everything's safe. I don't know about the valves and stuff. I don't know how deeply that's been looked into. Do you know if it's something that is certainly safe to be used on patients?
I think that are you talking about the heart valve that we're talking about?
Yeah.
I don't think it's able to be used on patients. I think it's more of a replication for because I don't think we're necessarily there yet. Maybe that's something we could definitely advance to, but I don't think that's something we're there yet. But it was just made for, as I said before, to practice procedures. So what I want to get into is how is this heart made? I talked a little about nanolithography and it's kind of how it's important, but I want to get into how this specific heart is made. So they use the aortic root models, and they're made by using CT scans, which is CAT scans of the patient to match the exact shape of the heart. And they use 3D printing using specialized silicone-based inks that mechanically match the real feel of a heart tissue, like the actual feeling, the sensation, everything. And these commercial printers currently on the market can print a 3D shape, but the inks are not enough to match the real softness of our heart tissue. I was trying to say that they need special technology to do this. They can't just use a commercial printer, print a heart. That's not kind of how it works. They need the feeling, because the feeling is ultimately important, not how it lasts, how they operate on it, because it's obviously, as I said before, it was made for procedure practice.
Yeah, I think it's one thing is just having the actual heart, having all the valves, all this different stuff, but I definitely think that having the feeling is a whole different thing, because when you're actually with the actual heart, it could be a totally different sensation than just being with just a plastic heart. So yeah, I definitely think it's important to have that feeling. But at the same time, yeah, it does seem just as you were going through with all these CT scans and all this stuff, it does seem like a lot of work. But at the same time, I do think I think it's very worth it to help advanced learners and just to help prepare. So so procedures can overall just go better, right?
Yeah, overall better. And that TAVR procedure, for like even just this one procedure, it could just save lives. I think it's ultimately so important that these inventions and these new innovations, these new techniques are improved upon and used so that we can ultimately be better, learn better, and harness our type of skills better. And then going back to that nanolithography, there's so much stuff going on in there. The circuit boards, this printing, this idea of printing what you need and printing new technology is so amazing to me, because you can actually improve technology. You can follow Moore's law, which is, if you don't know what Moore's law is that the number of transistors in an integrated circuit doubles every some amount of years. And it's going to get so small to a point where it's going to be smaller than like maybe an atom. That's where it's eventually going to go, because it's going to keep on getting smaller and smaller. But it's crazy to me that we're actually printing at this precise scale. So kind of what do you think about how this precision can be used, and how we can use this precision kind of for the future, and how it's important?
Like, I know like all this, like we have so much like technology in like our lives daily, and sometimes sometimes you said like it can get to a point where it's so tiny, like all the different materials inside certain things are so tiny, like even with with like laptops and stuff, like I feel like there was a point where like a few years ago the laptop used to be so bulky, and even like computers and stuff, everything used to be so bulky. So like I feel like it's getting to a point where everything's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But I think there's a certain point where you can't get any smaller, to a point where like the usability of it isn't really that great. Like let's say for a laptop, like I know the one I'm on right now, it's like I think 13 inches, but like there's a point where you can make it very light, but I don't think there's a point where you can really like make the screen smaller or something. So I think they have to make sure that they're using it in the right way to make sure it's still efficient for people to use. But still like yes, I can understand like if they want to make it like very light, but at the same time they have to make sure that they're not taking away the productivity of like an actual like laptop or something like that. But this does seem like really cool technology, but I definitely think they need to just think for like a while about how they want to use this in the most productive and the most efficient way possible.
Yeah, and I think that there's also something I wanted to mention too, that there's new types of lithography to account for the problem that you just said. Like it was a major problem and major concern to everyone who's developing this technique. So they're trying to make something called the NGL, which is the next generation lithography. So this includes things like ion beam lithography, electron beam lithography, and trying to going really precise. So one thing that we all know, because we've all used the product of it, is photolithography, which is used to create circuit boards, semiconductors, and it can go about sub 100 nanometers, and it could create sub 100 nanometer patterns. But there's so much coming, and it kind of addresses your problem that it goes to such a certain point where it's going to be so small, and it's going to be not usable. But I think that we're actually creating new innovations, new techniques to maybe combat this problem. But I still think this problem is a major risk within like the next decade or 2 decades. So you're definitely right about that.
Okay, so next we're going to move into our second article of the day, which is called A Leap Forward in Biomaterials Design Using AI. So this article was released August 24th, so 5 days ago. So it's very new and very recent. And basically, just to like kind of overview what this article is talking about, there are researchers from Tokyo Tech, which is a university in Tokyo, that have found ways to use AI, artificial intelligence, to predict the degree of water repulsion and protein absorption in ultra-thin organic materials. So this might sound like a lot, and you might like wonder why is this important? So by enabling accurate predictions of these two processes, it opens up new possibilities for the screening and design of organic materials with desired functions. So we're actually going to go a lot more deep into this, but that's just kind of like a brief overview. So to go like a little bit more in depth, the researchers used machine learning, which we actually talked about earlier, but in an earlier episode, but just to kind of overview that. Machine learning is basically just artificial intelligence that enables computers to learn information without being explicitly programmed to have that information. And they also use artificial neural network, which is one of the main tools in machine learning. And they use these two things to predict the degree of water repulsion and protein absorption of ultra-thin organic materials. known as self-assembled monolayers, or for short SAMs. So that's most of the tech behind it, how they're using machine learning to kind of find these two properties in SAMs. But you might be wondering, like, why is this important? Well, for start, SAMs are used for the development of different applications in organic electronics and biomedical engineers. So this can like open the door up to advanced medical screening and the design of SAMs, and potentially in later, it could reduce costs and timeliness of creating certain biomedical devices. So I think it's just really cool how these properties can affect the biomedical field in such a large way, which is such a big field, honestly. And it can help a lot of people in the future. And I feel like also, like, as a society, we're shifting towards like a lot more like organic materials, like organic engineering. So I think it's like important to realize how this kind of these SAMs and how what we're doing with the SAMs can they basically can just reduce the cost of them in the future, and they could also create a faster timeline of when we can produce these things. So yeah, that's a lot of what I found. Well, what do you have to say about this?
So so you talk a lot about the SAMs, and I'm
Yeah.
everyone like understood why SAMs are so attractive for like the development of many applications in organic electronics. But I also want to talk a little bit about the ANN, the artificial neural network. And the ANN became capable of predicting water propulsion. So it's kind of, as Shad said before, it's kind of like not being explicitly programmed to do so. This neural network can actually like kind of talk to each other. These bytes of information can talk to each other and predict the protein adsorption accurately. And I wanted to like, it's really important on how that went to demonstrate the prediction of water propulsion and protein adsorption for hypothetical SAMs, and how these two are kind of related. And it's kind of like what we've talked about this a lot, and I'm pretty sure everyone is kind of now kind of used to it, how artificial intelligence is being more synonymous with MSE, especially in the SAMs, and how this study can open the door to advanced material screening and the design of SAMs, as Shah said, to reduce costs and timescales. It's so crazy at how artificial intelligence is becoming integrated with this. But this is specifically biomaterials, organic electronics. So do you think that biomaterials will like keep on being integrated with artificial intelligence, or biotech specifically?
I definitely think so. Like, I feel like in like our a lot of our past episodes, we've been talking about AIs, but not really in the biomedical field. But just seeing this article and what they're doing with these SAMs, and just basically how they're integrating AIs with biomedical engineering, it just seems like it's such a unique thing to combine. It seems very unique, and I think it's something that needs a lot more research behind, and it's something that I think a lot of researchers are starting to look more into as more things come out. So I think definitely this article and basically all this research just kind of is going to open the door more for not just for the SAMs, just in general, not just the SAMs, but more generally just for AIs with biomedical engineering, which I think is really cool for the future.
Yeah. So as Shaz said before, these are opening doors, and we kind of understood how the SAMs have become more attractive and more desirable. But I also want to talk about something that Shaz and I really kind of saw and really enjoyed watching and learning about. And this is kind of goes into the biomedical thing, but it goes a lot into this brain interface that we're kind of looking into, because we talk about neural networks, but this is more about the brain and how MSE kind of integrates with that. Neuralink. So we've all like know what Neuralink is. It's like some sci-fi crazy type of stuff, implanting chips in the brain. And it sounds really scary. It is really not. I assure you, it's not scary from reading about it. It's not scary at all, but it's really cutting edge stuff. Stuff that it's imagine having a chip in your brain, Chaz, and then it could actually cure paraplegics, or help people with blindness, or cure deafness, or whatever. Like these issues that we thought were once done, like unfixable or like permanent, are no longer.
It's like this, sorry, but it's like this one like little seamless like implanted device can just solve so many brain and spine problems. And I actually saw a picture as well of Neuralink from this time around last year compared to right now, and just to see the difference in like the size. Like it used to like go from your ear, and then there are these multiple wires and cables that went to the top of your head, but now it's just this like little coin-sized device that they just put inside your head, and it's so seamless, and the operation isn't bad. So it's honestly crazy that this little thing can have such a big impact, and it seems so futuristic, honestly. Like when I first heard about this, I was like, there's no way this is happening in like our world right now. It just seemed like such a futuristic topic, and it just like when me and Safe thought we were gonna talk about this in this episode, we were like so happy. We were so happy to share this with you guys. So yeah.
Yeah, we were so excited because if we're currently recording this on August 29th, and the August 28th, they had a big presentation, as Shaz kind of mentioned, that they innovated so much in Neuralink, and it's so precise. These electrodes are so precise, and I don't know if they use any type of lithography to create for the chips, but I know that they actually used kind of more MSc and just mechanical engineering and all these like different fields to come and make a kind of a nanorobotic surgeon to actually make the Neuralink. So they have something that for the Neuralink and makes the Neuralink. So it's crazy how going so small. I think this episode is kind of centered on how small we can get with technology and like precision. And I want to talk a little bit about what they kind of did at that kind of keynote speech or presentation. So with the device surgically implanted into the skull of a pig named Gertrude, Elon Musk demonstrated his startup's Neuralink technology to build a digital link between brains and computers. So there was a wireless link from the Neuralink computing device and shows the pig's brain activity as like the pig like looked around for a pen on stage, which is crazy. It's obviously showing brain activity, something we kind of used to, but it's already here. It's in your brain. But now it's on the top. It's no longer on the ear, near the ear, but it's on the top, and it's just there, and it could like sense all these information. So it's allowing to use sensors and take in all this information, which is crazy.
I think like if you think about like in the past, a lot of like if you wanted to look at your brain activity, you would have to be in like one area, and you'd have to be in like a lot of equipment around your head. But this is something so tiny, and it just you can be so mobile with it. It's not like you just have to be in one area and they have to read your brain activity. You can be mobile, and not only just about reading brain activity, but this can also help solve so many brain and spine problems that you may have as well. So that's also a really big factor in it. And I feel like a lot of like what we're talking about today, as well as with like everything getting super small, is also about how we can just help people in the biomedical fields, such as what Saif was talking about with the hearts, the 3D printed hearts. It just, all these practice and this Neuralink, all these things just go back to helping people. And I just feel like that's such an important thing to do, especially now, what's going on in the world. So yeah.
Yeah, especially now. So this like second generation, and more into like the tech side, there's tiny electrode threads that penetrate the outer surface of the brain and detect the electrical impulse from the nerve cells, and this shows that the brain is in work. So they want to actually have something that actually communicates with the threads back and forth with the computer generated signals, and it goes back and forth to communicate, you do this, and then you can get information out of it. It's kind of like Musk said, it was kind of like a Fitbit for your brain. And which is kind of weird to think about. That's not where you would normally keep a Fitbit, but this kind of crazy to think about how it communicates with brain cells with over 1,000 thin electrodes that penetrate the outer layer of the brain. And kind of like crazy how the sensors work and how they created the sensors and how they use that technology to actually do this.
Yeah. And the technology goes a lot more in depth than just what we're talking. We're talking about a lot of like the basic tech, but a lot of it hasn't really been released yet, or it's like if you want to do your own research, if you're really interested about this, or if you want us to like talk more about this, we can definitely do that. But the technology goes a lot more in depth than what we're talking about right now. But yeah, just like on a general scale though, I just like feel like there's not really much innovation without thinking outside the box. And that's something definitely that we're starting to do a lot more in society, which is really cool. Just as with Neuralink, like who would have even thought to like have a chip in your brain that would do all this stuff, like a Fitbit in your brain? But it's just so important that like anyone who's listening to this, think outside the box, you can do like honestly anything and just have an idea and just work to it. So I think that's something really important to take away from this episode as well.
Yeah. So for more on the electrode thing and like in depth is like, so there are devices that are used to detect the electrical fields. So in the brain, and the electrical fields occur when nerve fires a message from one to another. And the Neuralink use the electrodes to detect when the nerves are sending these messages to each other. And then they can actually harness this information and present it into real world data. So now I want to like actually create kind of like a model. So if anyone listening on audio, try to imagine this in your head. But if anyone listening on YouTube, try to like follow along with Chaz and I. So one of the electrodes, let's call this electrode 1, was placed on the right on the neuron. And it's because it's directly on the neuron, it will be able to detect any electrical field generated as a result of the neuron firing. So if the message is sent, we can detect that electrical field. And then they then placed another electrode, which we'll call electrode 2, farther away to see if the electric field from the neuron firing could still be detected. And if they moved it farther and farther away until the point where electrode 2 can no longer detect the neuron electrical signal, electrode 1 would report that the neuron is firing, but electrode 2 wouldn't be able to confirm it. In other words, electrode 2 was too far from the neuron that electrode 1 was intended in. And so this distance where it goes up to the point where the electrode 2 cannot confirm whether a neuron is firing is 60 nanometers. And without getting any further, the fact that 60 nanometer means it would have to be inside, not outside the skull. So kind of a rundown of what that kind of means, what that model is trying to say is that you have to be kind of 60 nanometers apart, a little less than that, to detect the neurons firing and to get that information. But the ultimate thing is everything can be just one chip inside here, and there's nothing out in the skull. So I wonder kind of how they did this, obviously, but that's obviously the more technology side. Shaz and I were considering doing a whole episode on Neuralink, the specific technology. We research it, and if you want to see that, let us know. But that's kind of like the model on how that whole thing is done to cure blindness, hearing loss, paraplegics, whatever.
Yeah, so I think that's enough on Neuralink for today. But yeah, definitely safe with just talking about it if you want to hear more about that. We'll do some more research. Definitely do your own research as well. Also, if you have any other questions for us about anything that you've heard from today, let us know in the chat if you're on YouTube, but you can email us if you want to know as well if you're on Spotify. So yeah, say if you have anything else.
Yeah, I think that, obviously this is very, very important.
Yeah, definitely.
So while we kind of wrap up here and we go kind of to the end, I kind of want to recap of everything that we talked about. We both know, Shaz and I know, and hopefully you guys learned a lot. We also know that we talked about a lot, and I don't want anyone to be lost in translation about what we discussed and what the innovations are currently. So the first thing we kind of discussed was researchers 3D print lifelike heart valve models to ultimately like practice procedures on, but to ultimately create that feeling to in a heart, in a real life heart with all the veins, the aorta, the arteries, whatever it may be, and then to actually practice on this and to help for procedures like the TAVR procedure that we talked about. And it's crazy that we're able to do this. And then we talked about more how the researchers in that actually wanted to use to see like this 3D printing technology go to electronics and kind of integrated circuits and circuit boards, things like that. And we went into more of a lithography and nanolithography and how that etching in 3D process is used for other technology and other integrated circuits for ultimate like phones, cell phones, and everything like that.
Yeah, and then in our second article, we went over how researchers found ways to use AIs to predict the degree of water repulsion and protein absorption using machine learning, and how safe went a lot in-depth ANN, artificial neural network, and for organic materials known as SAMs, self-assembled monolayers. And more generally, we just talked about how researchers are a lot more just starting to discuss how AIs relate to biomaterials and biomedical engineering, so how that can be used more in the future.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit also about the MSC in Neuralink and how Neuralink is kind of made, but also what its implications are. We always like to look at, as if you didn't already guess, Shaz and I always looked at like, what can this be used for? How does the MSC, how does this technology actually improve and improve the future of all of us. And we talked a lot about Neuralink. And remember, if you want to talk more about if you want us to talk more about Neuralink, just let us know. But I hope you guys will research your own information and innovation in Neuralink.
So now that we got that out of the way, just to recap on just STEM encounters in general. So just to recap, STEMencounters.com is our website. At STEMencounters is our Instagram. If you have any comments about our podcast, let us know in the comments section. Email us. We have so many blog posts coming out about different things that are going on in STEM. And we're also open to donations, as we said in the introduction. So yeah, definitely go on our website, donate if you can. If you don't, then just listen along. We love that too. We just want to make sure that all of you can just learn with us and just grow with us and just learn more about STEM. That's just our goal at the end of the day, right, Saif?
Yeah, that is our main goal. Just learn about STEM. And if you obviously don't feel pressure to donate or don't feel pressure to do anything like that, just sit here and learn about STEM. And please stick with us. Shaz and I know we have so many new initiatives coming up in STEM Encounters to just spread STEM, spread MSE for the world. And we, as Shaz said before, where you can find us, and this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, or sorry, not iTunes, but it's on Google Podcasts. And overall, we hope you enjoy.
Thank you very much for listening, everyone.
Yeah. See you in the next one.